And we're live. Welcome back, everyone. Onan here. So it's a solo episode today. Midnight had some other um, conflicts come up. Hope you guys can hear me okay. It's uh, it's funny because I was actually thinking about talking about this topic, and then I'm actually still kind of in the middle of a Twitter discussion slash debate about this topic, and so I was like, well, I think I know what I want to talk about today. So I'll probably be here for about 45 minutes or so. So if you want to hop in the chat, just go ahead and do so. So the title of today's episode is Just Stop Gooning, which I don't know. I can't see that word without thinking of the Goonies, and I don't know if the which ruins which for me. But and it feels like kind of a weird juvenile term, kind of like saying pee pee and poo poo, but it's a term that gets thrown around without necessarily a super good definition of it. I've seen people use it in, I would say, kind of a narrow sense, just to kind of refer specifically to masturbation, or if as the Catholics were supposed to say, self abuse. Um, but I also see it getting uh, sort of used much more broadly than that, and talk about just kind of a whole general category of, I don't know, sexual deviancy. Could be solo, could be porn, could be I don't OnlyFans. I don't know. It's not everyone seems to use a consistent definition of it. Um, I'm going to use it in the stricter sense because I think that's, I guess, to me, I think that seems like the more accurate way to use the term, in the strict sense of solo masturbation, self abuse, whatever you want to call it. Let's just say, for purposes of this discussion, outside the context of using porn, it's just a man and his imagination. And so the other day I was on Twitter, and I can't remember what we were talking about. I think it was a fight about NFP and contraception and things like that, and um, maybe marital debt. And a couple of us made the point, like, I think it doesn't really get talked about a lot, but I think if you step back and look, you will understand that this issue, which I think contraception kind of gets all the attention for how Catholics are different than most other religions, most other Christian religions, even I think than, let's say, the Orthodox, which I think, from what I can understand, have a little more of a sort of a relaxed position, or at least have exceptions for use of contraception. But the contraception thing gets all the attention as the uniquely Catholic topic out there. But I think if you were to look at it, this might even be more uniquely Catholic. Now, I don't know. Um, there seems to be some perspectives out there that are fine with contraception, but still think gooning is horrible, and I'm not sure the rationale behind it. But I think, for the most part, most most religions other than Catholicism have, I don't know, kind of moved on from, I guess, a historical mistreatment of gooning, and either kind of treat it as a non-issue, or don't really get too uptight about it. So, but the church, I think, is you know for better or for worse, been pretty consistent on this. Although I think you know some of the language that came out in the 70s, is it in Persona Humana? I can't remember if that's the right one. Talk about it a little bit. The Catechism talks about it. 2352 talks about it, and kind of reaffirms the traditional perspective that it's intrinsically disordered, can never be done for any reason, et cetera, et cetera. But then sort of has a paragraph at the end that talks about the circumstances that can um, diminish and lessen credibility. I'm sorry, culpability, not credibility, culpability. And in fact, this past weekend on Facebook, one of my priest friends um, circulated something that uh, uh, he's not a super traditionalist guy, but it was a meme or story talking about, I don't know if it was a vision that St. Alphonsus Liguori had, or it was just a story attributed to him where this man died and then the priest died and they both ended up in hell, and the priest ended up in hell because the man would come in and regularly confess the sin of masturbation, and the priest would kind of, you know, pat him on the back, give him a penance, and go see him next time, kind of thing. So it was a warning to priests, I guess, not to be easy on the masturbators. I think there's a story, or maybe it's not even a story. I think it's somewhere Saint Alphonsus Liguori, who I think was in the 16 or 1700s, somewhere in that time frame. It's a kind of a relatively new saint, doctor of the church, post that would be post Reformation, was said to have, if a man, I don't know if this is just men, but if a man confesses the same mortal sin, was it twice or three times in the calendar year, he should be denied absolution. Like, shouldn't. And I would imagine, like, this is probably the most prototypical sin that if guys struggle with, is the recurring one. Maybe porn's a close second, although I think back then they probably didn't have much by way of porn. So I would imagine it was the self abuse that was keeping the guys returning to the confessional. And there is a, I don't know, an urban legend. I believe it's true, but not sure if it's absolutely true. Where Saint Alphonsus Liguori is alleged to have instructed servants to literally tie his hands behind his back to keep him from falling into this. And I believe there is evidence that Martin Luther, one of the major causes of his sort of scrupulosity and despair and whatever, that when he was still an Augustinian monk before he ever left, was his sort of despair at ever overcoming this. And I mean, I suspect this is a pretty universal thing that most people, most men, struggle with in some respects of their life, and maybe throughout their entire life. And in, I think the church has, I don't know, I don't see a lot of effort put in by the church, I guess, to maybe grapple with this issue a little more. It seems to me, and just, based on 2352 and kind of things that I've heard in confession, that priests, for better or for worse, tend not to get super um, bent out of shape about it. They may admonish the guy, may encourage him to take some ice baths and things like that to do it. But I think they probably understand that it's likely that the guy will be back sometime in the future, irrespective of his well-intended desire not to, with the same problem, right? And I think that it seems to me that this issue is probably at the foundation of the church's historical teaching on marital debt. I mean, if this is, you know, the idea that spouses have a right to each other's bodies, a reasonable right to the conjugal act. I mean, that is the quote unquote cure for it. And I'll get to that in a little bit. What's the cure for gooning? I mean, I think most guys would agree that the best, most foolproof cure to the urge to goon is intimacy with your spouse, right? Hence the marital debt. Especially, which I've always said, if you're going to have 2352, if you're going to threaten men or women with hell, if they do that, Um, I mean, I think almost by definition, you have to have some concept of the marital debt just because that is that tends to be the way that people get out of it, right? Um, which that whole thing is, in my mind, this is just my opinion. It's sort of messed up. I mean, I think it's sort of messed up that someone, especially women, have to be subjected to those demands from their husband and carry with it all the risks and responsibilities associated with pregnancy so that he doesn't engage in quote unquote self abuse, right? Uh, I think I think it's really hard to say that with a straight face and say that that makes sense. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm sorry if that offends people or whatever, makes me a heretic, but I'm just offering my own um, personal opinion about the matter. And I think, like it or not, I mean, despite the best efforts of the trads, I think the marital debt idea has sort of grown out of favor. You don't really see it in the writings of John Paul II and the Theology of the Body, Catechism, Christopher West. I mean, that whole shift from marital debt to mutual submission is the whole thing that keeps the Timothy Gordons of the world in business because you know, they're very much they don't like that, and they think that's all modernist stuff, and maybe it is, and they want to sort of return to more of the traditional thing, which is there is no mutual submission. There's like you submit to me under potential pain of grave sin if you don't, and that's just the way it is. Like right, and there are plenty of people that I think still live that way. I think most of us don't. I don't. That's not. I, I think there is. I think there's an argument to be made that there's a reasonable expectation. I think there is a reasonable duty of spouses to attend to each other's physical needs, but I would stop there. I mean, I think it's. I would personally uh, be very, very uncomfortable with the idea that my spouse is sinning, especially in a grave matter, if I make what I think is a reasonable request and she says no. That does my sensibilities really just I don't think can get behind that. So, but back to the topic at hand. So Mike, I think it's Mike Pantiel. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Put out a video on his YouTube channel and it was posting on Twitter, title being "Just Stop Gooning" or something like that. And I, of course, lacked the good sense not to get involved in those kinds of conversations. So I started asking him. I'm like, okay, what's the solution? Because as I understand it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Mike has courses. I think his primary uh, business, if you will, is providing fitness and training, exercise type programs, training, coaching and stuff to men. But I think he mentioned in his video that he provides some sort of paid mentorship for guys that are struggling with this, which is something that he said he used to struggle with seriously. Which I want to talk about a little bit. Not because I want to pick on the guy, because he's I give the guy credit. He's very transparent about it. I think he's either a convert to the faith or he is um, a revert. I think he's a convert. Um, and according to his one video, when he was a teenager, he was extremely, I want to say, addicted to masturbation, porn. He said fornication, so I imagine he was sleeping around. And he said at some point in time, it got so bad that he was suffering from erectile dysfunction and was being prescribed enhancing drugs as a late teenager, which is crazy to me. And and that's his background, and I give the guy credit. I mean, he's kind of moved on from all that. He's a family man. I think he just had his fourth kid. I in no way do I want to diminish his enthusiasm for the faith and all that. And I'm glad that he has either been rescued or rescued himself from that life, right? That I think everyone can kind of agree is not healthy or sustainable. But now he is charging people. I don't know what he charges. I don't know what he charges for programs. I guess I should ask him. But and I would actually wouldn't mind having him on the show and have him talk about it. But I mean, he there are people that charge, and this is not just a Catholic thing, although I think in non-Catholic circles, because I see this stuff show up in my feed, there'll be non-Catholics, Christians with, let's say, biblical solutions for overcoming. I think they really point more towards the porn issue, which I personally think. I mean, the porn is a problem. Uh, I mean, it is super addictive. I think so. He charges. Someone just said he charges $3,000. That's that's wild. Uh, if I had a solution for people, I would do it for cheaper, but I don't. It's part of my angle here. I'm not sure there is a good solution, um, but this is not a uniquely Catholic problem. But I think uh, one of the things that I have said for a while, and I don't know if this is right or not, but I think we make a mistake when we treat porn and masturbation as sort of the same problem, even though they go hand in hand. Yes, pun intended. A lot of the time, I think they're separate issues. I think there's separate levels of problem for men, and I think they are separate and distinct from the standpoint of how easy it is for guys to overcome it. And I would say my feeling is I think it is easier and more important for guys to overcome the porn. Like, how to say this? I think it is more likely that a guy with a porn and masturbation habit can overcome the porn, but not the masturbation, and not the other way around. Like, I think it would be unusual for a guy to overcome the masturbation, but then keep watching porn. I mean, I guess sort of what's the point at that point, I guess. But, um, you know, as a church, we treat those as, I guess, the same flavor of sin and the same severity. I think. I mean, they're both grave matters. They're both declared to be mortal sins if done with full knowledge, full consent, and all that. And I think for a lot of guys, especially if they're doing both, can find themselves in a hopeless cycle because they can't. How do I say this? No one's going to tell them, "Hey, stop doing the porn, but go ahead and carry on with the solo for a while." Like, they're never going to be told that. They're going to be told, rightly or wrongly, that they need to stop both. I think stopping both of those is a more challenging problem for most guys, and let's say taking on one at a time. But because of the way that we characterize them, uh, it really doesn't make that possible. I think. In And I'm not suggesting that is the approach that should be taken, but I do think that approach for guys that are struggling with the porn stuff would be a more effective, more likely to be successful for them, to wean them off the porn first, and then let's deal with the solo, than to tell them to quit both cold turkey, because I think the likelihood of relapse is going to be much higher in that latter category. That's just my. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a coach. Not an expert on this stuff. I'm just telling you from my own, what I suspect is the case. But his video was specifically about masturbation, and And like I said, I think he offers courses for that. If anyone has any experience with that or has any information on it, leave it in the comments. Um, I don't know what his method is, but in his video, he at least the one he posted a few days ago, he said most men, and I actually tend to agree with him here. Most men fail to overcome it, even though they're doing all of the prayer, all the novenas, all the fasting, and all that kind of stuff, because they haven't actually formed the desire or the commitment to overcoming it. And he says you have to develop the will, and I actually sort of agree with that, and especially for guys. Um, I think especially for guys that are struggling, um, with both. Um, well, let's step back. So, um, I tend to think that for a lot of people, they have to believe that they can overcome it, right? They have to have the belief, and I've heard stories of guys that have kind of quit even after long um, times of struggle with this stuff, and have gone like on like an intense 30-day novena or something like that, and they come back cured. And hey, great! Like I'm not, in no way am I telling people not to do that or that that can't work. And but this is where I think Mike, I kind of agree with Mike here. Is I think it could have been and likely was them having the belief that they could stop doing this, and maybe doing the novena gave them the belief. I think it is as much a mindset thing as it is about doing the prayers. And I think maybe he's not maybe that's not exactly the point that he's making, but I think that is similar. It's not it's much more about the mindset or the belief or the will than it is about saying the right prayers or doing the other things. Although this is where he and I kind of I think diverge again. He suggested just don't touch your pee pee, which I kind of giggle at when he says that. Um, and take a cold shower if you need to, throw an ice pack on the junk if you have to, which that's, I don't know, that to me, that seems like the alarm bells ought to be going off there. Because uh, i- what are we trying to stop here? This is okay. Now, I mean, the ice pack, the cold ice bath, showers, and all that kind of stuff is dealing with a physiological condition, right? I mean, I and why is that physiological condition exists and for how long and what are the reasons for that? And uh, one of the people that was in the comments said, "Well, it's about not having proper custody of the eyes." I think that can contribute to it, but I don't think that's really the cause. Mike talks about the devil tempting you, which again, I'm not saying that isn't part of it or that the devil can't, but I think both are like overlooking the just the basic biological process going on. And this is I think this is why men suffer from this far more than women, because men and women have very different physiological, obviously we have different bodies. Sexual activity affects us differently. Sexual desire is different. The act the sexual act itself is different. Men, you know, you're expelling fluid, right? The hormones that you're giving off and receiving are different. Um, and so for men, at least, it is almost like clockwork. It's you go a certain number of days. For most guys, I would say it's about 3 days. Maybe if you're really high testosterone, it's 2 days. Maybe if you're a little older like me, it's 4 days, whatever. But you know, after you've been intimate or let's say by yourself, your body builds up over time in swelling or whatever you want to call it. There's a definitely a real process goes on that builds up that pressure, and that's when guys feel the desire to do that. And it is, I think, primarily a physical difficulty that guys are dealing with that gets, I think, most often just treated as a spiritual problem. I don't think you can just say a prayer to make that physical process go away any more than you can say a novena to make your bladder not feel like it's full in the middle of the night and you got to go to the bathroom. Man, they're just physical things that happen, right? And I'm not saying that. What I'm not saying is that means that solo's okay or whatever. I'm just saying I think as long as we're tackling this issue, not understanding why it's happening, first of all, and approaching it with solutions that don't deal with that problem, the cause, it's no wonder that most guys never overcome this, right? Um, th- but of course, the difficulty is the way that the issue is treated for us as Catholics. There aren't really any alternatives. It's basically prayer and ice baths, right? I mean, there's no. I mean, I don't think you'll find too many priests that'll come out and say, limit yourself to every 3 days or something, right? Um, I think most guys, if they're super addictive, let's just do a thought exercise here. This is don't take any moral advice from me, but let's just do a thought exercise here. Let's say you're a guy that's deeply attached to this, and it is like a daily occurrence. Maybe it's multiple times a day. You're going to have a much more difficult time stopping this than the guy, let's say, that finds every 3 to 5 days he's feeling the strong urge, right? I mean, if we were just treating this as a problem we were trying to solve, for the guy that's doing it every day, we would say, okay, let's not do it every day. Let's start by doing it every 2 days. This is how we handle drugs. I mean, there are we wean people off. I mean, I think if you're a sexually active man, you are in some ways it's just a functioning drug addict just because of the power of the hormones and the chemicals that go on in our body surrounding this issue. But most guys, if you said let's go from 1 day to every 2 day, and let's say they get to that and they can without problem make it every 2 days. You say, okay, now let's make it to 3 days. And then now we got that, let's make it to 4 days. Like, right? Like I think I think most guys, if they want to, could follow that to some degree and be able to wean themselves off or at least make it a more manageable problem. But the problem for us as Catholics is there is no manageable problem, right? It is you either do it or you don't. Any amount, no matter how infrequently, is not allowed. And so what it means is there aren't any real, I think, realistic solutions for guys that want to stop this for the most part. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing, because I think it's a different issue. If you're a single guy, or let's say you're a celibate guy versus a married guy, I think the paths are very different. If you're a single guy, you're a celibate guy, the goal you're trying to get to is to be celibate, right? To not have any sort of sexual activity, or if you're single and want to get married in the future. But for now, my state in life is I want to be doing none of this. Whereas for a married guy, it's we are sometimes sexually active. Most of us don't think we're as much as we want to be, but you know, you might be just saying, "I just want to make it to the next time when, because of NFP or whatever, we can be together again. I just want to survive this abstinence period." So, and and I think the thing about it, this is something that doesn't really get talked about, but I think it needs to get talked about. Is for most guys, I think this is why I think marriage especially if there's periodic abstinence involved, is more difficult. Especially when it comes to this issue, the issue of solo. I think it's more difficult for married guys than it is for non-married guys, because the non-married guy just needs to like train his body to never experience any kind of sexual enjoyment, sexual release, whereas the married guy is hopefully eventually going to enjoy that again. And the body's like, "Oh, that's right. This is great. I need this. I want this. I need to prepare for the next time." And so the married man's body, I think, is pushing him much harder in between, let's see, episodes with his spouse than the single guy or celibate guy. Now, I'm not saying those guys don't have sexual urges. I remember what it was like to be single. I was 24 when I got married. I remember what it was like, but I can say with absolute confidence that it was a much more manageable problem, um, when it was all off the table versus as a married man when it's off the table some of the time and then it's on the table again, and you go in this, um, you know, in the pool, out of the pool scenario. And I think this is I think the reason why I think this topic, this issue, you can't just take a one. Uh, I don't think there's a one size fit all approach, because I think it manifests itself very differently between marriage and, let's say, a single, a celibate or single state. And I think this is especially why, um, especially in marriages, I think this is at the core of a lot of the struggles that people have, especially Catholic men, where I mean, I don't think it would go away if you were using contraception and, let's say, abstinence wasn't near the problem. I mean, there's still going to be, um, I would say in most marriages, times when you are abstinent longer than you would like to be. But this is obviously a more of a challenge for those of us that aren't using contraception, whether we are using NFP or just using long-term quote unquote continence. Is I think our experience, our physiological experience is much different, much more severe than than the um, than the non-married guy, and the solutions I think are different. Uh, one of the things that we talked about was what do you do? So he's like, well, what are you going to do when it's late at night and you're lying in bed and the devil comes knocking? What are you going to do? When are you going to give in? And I'm like, well, okay, what about the married guy, the dad of five or six kids? It's 11 o'clock at night, and he's got to get up at 4 a.m. to go to his job. Let's say he works at a factory. Let's say he works with heavy equipment. He's a carpenter or something like that. Difficult, dangerous, especially if you're fatigued. And he's lying there. And that's, I would say, for most guys, going to be when the temptation is the strongest. That's when they're really going to be grappling with it, because they're like, it's keeping me up. I got to get to sleep. It's Tomorrow's going to, just get worse. The longer I sit here, the worse it's going to get. And that, I think, is when most guys feel the strongest surge. I don't know if that's the devil speaking to them or whatever, but it's a real thing. And I think that's where most guys are going to find themselves surrendering to that, for better or for worse. Well, the solutions being offered, I just don't know that are all that practical, because again, we don't really have any solutions to offer. We, as Catholics, we can't just tell the guy, okay, hey, you've made it 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. Go ahead and um, take one for the team here, get yourself to sleep, and then make it another 5 days. Like, we can't tell the guy that, right? I mean, at least not on the record, no one's going to say that. Um, so what's the guy told to do? Yeah, put an ice pack on, or take a cold shower, or whatever. Okay, yeah, that's going to help a lot. Like, that's eventually, I suppose he'll fall asleep. Maybe he doesn't fall asleep. Maybe the ice pack keeps him awake. Maybe the cold shower wakes him up, and now he's lying there till 2 in the morning because God forbid we don't want him self-abusing. So you got to do whatever you got to do. So there's this poor guy lying in bed, unable to sleep, and then let's say he does that. Let's say it works. His body finally gives up at 2 a.m. He goes to sleep, sleeps for 2 hours, gets up, goes to work the next day. Let's say he doesn't die in a horrendous factory accident or something like that, and he comes back the next day. Well, guess what happens that night? Exact same thing, only it's worse, right? And who suffers from that? Well, his wife and kids and employer. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I understand, like, you can't justify evil to accomplish something good. I'm not suggesting that we do, but I think we have to be honest enough about the situation to at least understand what people are going through, why they're doing their things, and why this, let's say, this dad might be tempted to do that. It's not because, probably it's not primarily because he's weak or he's lustful or good. He may just be practically like, I just want to go to bed. Maybe that's his thought process, but you'll never see that acknowledged in any of these videos. And what is that? You know, that is I think the part of the problem in all of this is I don't think those that are charging $3,000 for a course are really going to factor in. And I'm not saying they can, because, like, look, 2352, despite, I want to say, giving some, I don't know, freedom to guys, not freedom, but levity to guys and understanding and whatever. It's helpful to a degree, but I don't think most guys that are taking their faith seriously, trying to be good men, are going to be like, I think I'm sufficiently distressed that if I do it, it's probably not a mortal sin, and therefore, like, every guy I know, myself included, if they're in that situation, even if it's been a long time, and they're just trying to get some sleep so they can go to work for their kids, are going to err on the side of caution. They're going to assume it's a grave matter. They're going to wait to go to confession. And again, I'm not even saying that's the wrong approach, but that is more or less what's going to happen. And that guy probably isn't going to find any solutions other than, let's say, he and his wife are able to find more frequency in their lives. Maybe they get to menopause. I don't know. I mean, maybe things change on that, right? But that is the fundamental factor, the most critical factor, in my opinion, that determines whether married men are going to be gooning or not, is what is their intimate life with their spouse and how frequent. Because I think if you give most guys, let's say you give most guys a frequency of, let's say, every 3 to 4 days, I think most of us, the weakest among us, could make that work. You could do that. I think for most guys, you start to get 5 days, 7 days out. I think that's where guys start to fall off, right? But I think for most guys, you get to 3 to 4 days. Like, if you know that is going to be available to you, I think most guys are going to be able to nip this in the bud without really a lot of problem. But of course, that isn't really going to happen for most of us if you're fertile at all. Um, you know, you get, even in pregnancy, you get late in pregnancy and it's just not great, not comfortable. Postpartum, you've got a minimum of 6 weeks for most of us. Or you get into a situation where it's just prudentially you shouldn't be having kids, and you gotta space children. All kinds of things are gonna happen in most average marriages, where that pace of every 3 to 4 days is just not possible. It's not realistic. And so that is where I think I think we need to really look at that. And I would like to see the guys with courses, the guys that are charging for this stuff, the priests and the experts. I'm not an expert. I'm just a dude. But those that actually are the quote unquote experts, I would like to see them just simply acknowledge the reality of the situation as it is, and then, in an honest, humble, transparent way, you know, tell us what we're supposed to do. Tell men what they're supposed to do. Tell wives what they're supposed to do. Or be more, um, I guess, forgiving, more patient, more whatever to those that find that they just um, fail and continually to fail, um, under this issue. So I know this will just get me accused of being a gooner by all the friendly guys on Twitter and whatever. I mean, um, I get it. I get it. It's a weird topic. It's not the easiest topic. It's a topic that men and women, I think, by and large, experience very differently. And it's just by virtue of everything I've talked about, it's really not possible for Catholics to have a frank conversation like I'm suggesting we do here. It's just not. Um, and so, because we can't really have a frank conversation about it, because we can't really actually talk about what is actually causing it, and because we have um, limited most of the realistic solutions to this, we have a handful of, I would say, fairly ineffective solutions that we give to men, and then somehow we act surprised when it continues to happen. Like, it just, that's the part of this that bothers me, because I, I I could see why it's happening. I could see it there, and people still seem to be surprised that it happens. So I'll kind of wrap up here, but one of the things I wanted to talk about and emphasize is this is something that I've said um, multiple times over the church's rule against contraception. I think gets all the attention, right? That is something that I think most people, Catholic and non-Catholic alike, understand what the church says about it, and that is one of the most unique and probably difficult parts about being Catholic and married is the rule against contraception. And I agree. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, contraception would definitely make life easier. Maybe not better, but definitely easier. But that isn't the one component of it. It's one of three things, I think, that actually make Catholic marriage so challenging for most people, that if you only were dealing with two of these, you could probably do it. But the combination of all three is what I think creates a Bermuda Triangle, if you will, for Catholic marriage. So the number one, no contraception. So what does that mean? Well, if you want to engage in sex, you're going to have to use natural family planning, right? So that's number one. Number two is no other acts. Now, this is where, so other acts, what does that mean? Just basically other sexual acts to completion that don't involve intercourse, right? And that probably is what a lot of non-Catholics do. So you'll hear people talk about how plenty of, let's see, non-religious natural people use natural family planning, or you'll have evangelicals that use natural family planning. Well, yeah, they might be using natural family planning, but they're not living like brother and sister during the abstinence periods. They're either using condoms or other acts, oral, whatever, to completion. That's what that's what they're all doing, right? Um, so, but as Catholics, I think that's sort of a gray issue, but I will acknowledge that I think most everyone agrees that the probably the safest Catholic approach is to say no other acts. You got no contraception, no other acts. And then the third one is no masturbation, right? Um, if for example the church didn't allow contraception and didn't allow other acts but allowed masturbation, that I think is a very different scenario. Or if the church says no I'm sorry, no masturbation, no solo, but you could use contraception, that most couples could probably accomplish that, could probably follow that. Or third option, if it was clear, no contraception, no masturbation, but the couple could engage in other acts, I think most people could actually live by that and follow that. But the three together is what makes it nearly, I will say, nearly impossible. I would almost go so far as to say it's impossible if the standard is a couple faithfully abides by all those rules for the entirety of their marriage. I'm not talking about someone that who is does pretty good, but they occasionally slip up, they go to confession, whatever. No, I mean, if the expectation is a couple is going to go through their entire marriage and neither husband or wife is going to use contraception, engage in other acts, and engage in solo, unless they're infertile, and even then, I think there are going to be situations where it's going to be difficult for them. But unless they're infertile, I think there are. I would be surprised if there's any couples that have ever lived, um, or will ever live, or living now, that can say they've gone through their entire marriage and not fallen into one or more of those three things. I would be surprised. Like I don't think that exists. Um, Most of us try to some degree. Some of us try very hard. Some of us try. Some people have cheat codes or whatever. Some whatever. I mean, but I think we should just be very perfectly honest here that there is. I would say I would bet all the money I have that there's not a couple out there that's fertile and can go through their entire marriage and not violate one of those three prongs. Um, Now that doesn't mean that any of that's wrong, but I think it's a compelling point to ponder for a little bit. I think it's a compelling point to ponder for a little bit because I think most people, um, I think most Catholics can, even though it's difficult, and I will acknowledge it's difficult. I think most of us can go through marriage without using contraception. Most of us. Now, um, we've made it this far, and I expect that we're going to make it the rest of our fertile years without doing that. But the other things are just different, right? They're so. Hey, here's my co-host. Good to see you, man. You probably missed a good one here. I just talked about masturbation the whole time, so you didn't miss much. But I think this is a very very important topic, and I don't know what to do about it because I know, I already know. I'm sure I'll go log on to Twitter and my feed will be full of people calling me a gooner and whatever. Or I'm pro gooning. I mean, that's what they always say. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. I'm just trying. I just think. Uh, I just think someone just needs to talk about it and talk about it in real and frank terms and like if we can't like if we gotta like I don't know, just kind of quietly talk about it in confession or use these goofy words like gooning and self-abuse and all that. To me, that just says we're not really being serious about it. We're not taking this seriously. And I think that needs to change because if it doesn't change, nothing's going to change. Every man is going to be in the same boat. Maybe they're going to I don't know, do something to overcome it for a period of time, or maybe they're going to lean heavily on their wife, or they're going to invoke the marital debt, or whatever they're going to do. Um, and maybe that is the solution. I don't know. I mean, I think if you, like I said before, I think if you're going to put masturbation on the list of very, very naughty no-nos that could send you to hell, I think you're going to have a hard time saying that the marital debt isn't a thing. I- I'm not a fan of the marital debt, but I think you're going to have a hard time. This is where I think the TOB people have a problem, because they don't like the marital debt, but they don't like masturbation. They don't like all this. Like, I think there are some things about the theology of the body that I think are an upgrade from, let's see, the more traditional approach, the marital debt approach, the all that. I think the theology of the body has some wonderful things to offer women, a special way that I would say traditional approaches didn't have. But they still kept all this, and as long as you're going to um, as long as you're going to make, let's say, the marital act much more optional, but you're still going to punish the man, generally the man, for slipping into these things. Um, I think I think you're just trading one set of problems for another one, right? Yeah, I mean, in here, this is a good point, because people will, every so often there'll be a fight, will pop up about whether men need sex, or when other anyone needs sex. Um, and I think there's two important things to keep in mind about that. So, number one, I should write these down because my old mind will forget them. But there's two things. Um, I've forgotten the one. Is it need? Oh yeah. So, what is a need? Okay, I think we have fallen into this habit of treating a need as something that's essential for survival. Water, food, air. Those are like legitimate needs that if you don't have, you will die. But most of us don't really think of that, of needs in that very restrictive context. Most of us consider heat in our homes in the winter to be a need, air conditioning in the summer to be a need, healthcare to be a need, doctors, cars, jobs. Um, Maybe they're not needs in the technical sense, but they're sure the heck needs in a practical sense. If you want people to like do more than just subsist and exist, right? If you want people to like actually not just not starve, but actually be well nourished, like, right? Like, there's a difference between uh, like, you can cure starvation by giving someone all the rice that they need, but they're not going to be well nourished, right? You're going to be malnourished. And this is where I think I have seen, especially in, let's say, the TOB circles, where they will be dismissive of the idea that men have, or anybody, but especially men have a sexual need, because um, they won't die without it, which is true. Probably, at least on an acute level, maybe not over time. I think there's an argument that at some point in time it could become dangerous to your life. But um, I don't think we should be treating the concept of need in such a very such a rigid way. And then I think number two is, this is kind of gets to the heart of the issue, is, well, I think I think most people have a need for some sort of sexual expression, sexual release. I think the fact that men um, will at some point in time experience a nocturnal emission if they wait long enough, to me says that there is a bodily physiological need for a somewhat regular sexual sexual release, right? I think most men have a need for that on a regular basis. Not so much sex itself, although that's the best kind. That's what most people would choose if they had the choice. But it it sex sort of becomes the need when you have taken away the other options that they might otherwise have available to them. So I think in a weird roundabout way, it actually becomes a need to the extent that you've eliminated the other obvious ways that men might seek to fulfill that on, let's say, on a temporary basis when because of job circumstances, postpartum, fertility, whatever, they can't come together in the full marital act. But so I think that's how. But you're right, and I think even expanding it beyond, which is I think was Midnight is saying here, is you know sexual intimacy, especially in the marital act, but not necessarily limited to that, just provides a lot of benefit to the couple, to the individual, to the family, the bonding, the reunification, the Joan and I were talking about this the other day on the podcast, the communication that seems to naturally arise out of frequent physical intimacy. So and all the good things that come from a couple being able to talk and share more deeply, so that has positive effects. There's the various uh, benefits to the brain and the body from the hormones and things that come from it. That I think you have to be able to say that it constitutes a need, especially within the context of married. Like I said, I think you can distinguish married people from non-married people. I think once you're married, once you've been active, once you are hopefully intermittently active, I think it becomes a need to some sort of sexual activity becomes more or less a need. I mean, at least that's my position. I'm sure there's plenty of people that disagree, but that's what I would say about that. Um, yeah, I mean, so I think this is something that is often too dismissed as well. Is um, you know there are legitimate reasons why people can't or shouldn't have kids, and um, I see a lot of times the recommendation is, well, just stop using NFP, stop using abstinence, just enjoy yourselves and take whatever kids God gives you, which is fine. I mean, if you want to do that, great, but not everyone can do that, and I would say should do that. And I think it's really easy to say that if, as the commenter says, you're in a financial position to do that, right? Um, I I'm not going to name names, but there are plenty of people who advocate that they themselves are no longer fertile. Maybe they've had a hysterectomy, or they have, one for one reason or another, are not constantly becoming pregnant and making new children. So it's true. I mean, I think what I have noticed that it is very easy for people, and I'll put myself in this category, to assume that reality for everyone else is exactly as it is for me. And it is really difficult for us to step outside of ourselves and realize that other people have it very differently. Or maybe objectively they have what it takes to have another child, but let's say subjectively, internally, they're dealing with fear, depression, anxiety. You know, I know that when my wife's had a really difficult labor, that is in her mind. It's not in my mind, but it is in her mind. And I think, I think I have, as I've become older and I've seen more and experienced more, I really much adopt the idea that people should have children because they want to have children and when they want to have children. I think one of the most awesome things about being married is being in a position where we want to have a child. We come together, we try to have a child, we make a child. That is truly the it just doesn't get any better than that. Like that experience of coming together with that person that you love greatly and bringing a life into the world because you both want to is magical. On the flip side, I think there are a few things more, I won't say detrimental, but problematic when a couple that doesn't want to get pregnant and may have very legitimate reasons not to get pregnant, and but in the normal course, trying to do NFP or whatever, finds themselves pregnant. I mean, we adapt. People are adaptive, but there is a price to be paid for that. There is a that is a, there's a harm being done there that I think too often just goes quietly unnoticed. So it's asked why can we not use tools available to us to improve our lives? I mean, uh, that's that's the question that I think most people, non-Catholics, just kind of naturally follow. They're like, well, they make these decisions for better or for worse on what they think individually or collectively as a couple or family is best for them. And for us who are Catholic, we just don't have that luxury, or may not feel like we have that luxury. And it is difficult. It is difficult when you're dealing with a problem and you see s- at least reasonably good solutions to those problems that you both would like to do if you could do, have no obvious harm or consequences to the marriage, and you don't do it, and you subject yourself to something worse because, well, this is what we've been told. These are the rules. And again, I get it. We're Catholics. We're supposed to do hard things. Following Christ is not supposed to be easy. I get all that. But I don't think that means that just because we're telling people to do hard things, that all those hard things are required. Sometimes it's just self-inflicted. Sometimes we're you know we do hard things because we make bad decisions or we're slow learners or whatever, right? So that I think that is something that a lot of Catholics struggle with in good faith and find themselves at a point where it's not, what do I say, it's not just an inconvenience to them to, let's say, follow the rules, or it's not just a sacrifice to follow the rules, but they may find themselves legitimately deciding whether their marriage is going to survive or not. And that, I think, is something that um, just gets ignored too much. And I think I just want to highlight that. I want to highlight the fact that not everyone that finds themselves unable or unwilling to accept all of these things is motivated by some carnal, selfish, lazy desire. It's not just a matter of stop gooning or whatever, but that there's something much more profound and complicated going on there that I think we would all be better off if we could just step back and be a little less judgmental, a little more sensitive, and maybe a little more open and transparent about having these conversations and making sure that what we're requiring of people is in fact what's required of them, because we're putting heavy burdens on people, very 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 heavy burdens on people that we better be damn well, damn sure are required because it's causing a lot of pain and suffering along the way. So, and that's why we're here because these kinds of conversations just tend not to happen. So, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I appreciate you guys who showed up in the comments, um, and those that come in afterwards. Like I said, I don't I don't necessarily enjoy talking about this, and I don't like being the guy that has to be the one that talks about this stuff. And I know I'm going to get heckled, and I know the comments will be. I know what the comments will be when I get back on Twitter, but I think it has to be said by someone. And the last thing I will say is this: I hope that those that disagree with me challenge me. Let's have a conversation. There's nothing more frustrating, in my experience, to be like have someone hear what I have to say, call me all kinds of names, tell me this and that, and then reject any reasonable invitation to have a conversation about it. Like, put your money where your mouth is. Tell me I'm wrong. Show me I'm wrong. I I don't have any tricks up my sleeve. I don't hide the ball. I just come in. This is what you see is what you get. I guess what you don't see, what you hear is what you get. And I'll be happy to have a conversation with any of the folks that think I'm wrong, but I'm going to take your inability or unwillingness to even have a conversation as as a validation that at least something what I'm saying resonates and you're too afraid to be confronted about it. So that's what I'm gonna make that challenge. I want to challenge people. If you think I'm wrong, have the guts to get on and let's talk about it. Show me where I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, you show me I'm wrong, I'll be I'll be happy to change. I'll be happy to change my viewpoint on it. But I'm not going to do it just because you said so. I want to see something to back it up. So that's my challenge to you guys. So okay, all right. Well, I appreciate everyone. Hopefully next week. Actually, next week I won't be because I have a surgical procedure next week. So maybe midnight I'll be on next week, but I should be back the week after that. So hey, if you get a chance, say a prayer for me. It's nothing life threatening, but I'm having an operation next week. Not the operation; they're not taking away my manhood, but got to take care of some other stuff because that's what happens when you get old like me. So say a prayer for me, my wife, and yeah, I love all you guys. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.